And the ones you keep are the ones that become mechanical changes, or may actually, I don't know if they become mechanical changes, they become source of extra stones later.
Yeah. Right.
So you're sort of choosing as you go what are becoming the motifs of your character through play.
Right.
And the idea is you can do a ton of. Now, the cool thing is that you repeat it. That means you're going to get a free stone, but that doesn't mean but you can't write anything new. I did it again is not a worthy entry, right? So
Correct.
you're
Yeah.
you're expanding your character through doing new stuff or saying new stuff, and you are getting bonuses by hitting the motifs that you've liked along the way. It's a pretty
So
good
you,
idea. It's actually a really good
yeah,
idea. And you get this little list, right? Eventually, that is a rather nice profile of your character as built, as experienced.
and I think that is definitely something I
Seems,
really like about my new thinking and what you're talking about.
yeah,
Uh, because and but it's something I just thought of, and this might have been where you were going. Is you can only write down I defeated the bandit leader once, no matter how many bandit leaders you defeat after that.
yeah. After that, it's
That
your
doesn't
thing.
increase.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't increase your legacy at all to do it
right.
again.
hmm
Okay. Okay.
Um,
I think
so,
that's a really good idea.
so if you have this notion of when that let's it's always good to walk these things back. Another thing that I'm
Yeah.
saying as a crude but very educationally useful phrase is in every single iteration of Dungeons and Dragons, a roll to hit is nothing more than a subroutine of leveling up.
Correct. Right.
Now,
I
when I
agree with
say
that.
nothing more, I'm talking mechanically,
Yeah.
right? Because and you can see why, right? Somebody
Yeah.
can say, well, what's the point of subroutine of successfully defeating this monster or failing to successfully defeat this monster? And then that
Yes.
in and of itself is a unit of this leveling up business. And
Yeah.
so the idea therefore is to get across to the students that the role of rolling to hit is not how well do I represent rolling to hit in a physical or fictional fashion. So
Yeah.
describing it more floridly or sincerely, you tell it's a rule. You have to describe it from the heart. It's like
Yep.
say, tell me, tell me you love me like you mean it, right?
Right.
Um,
Exactly like that.
right.
Yes. Exactly.
So we're
And I
trying
think
to
that's
well, that's one route, and then the other route
yeah.
is to go all, to go all Romaster on us, or even more so. I'm thinking of games like I'm gonna have to play this one of these days, just because it is such a thing of its driving aesthetic. It's such a thing of its purpose. Is the game Powers and Perils, which came out in the mid '80s, which is
I've heard of that one.
yeah, it's kind of notorious in a lot of ways, I think. But the main thing is that if you, how am I going to put this? You will you will know every single bit of muscular effort, attention, weapon quality. You will know each and every factor that plays into whether you hit
Right.
that guy. And there it seems to me as though this aesthetic during play, this aesthetic for design, rests entirely on fear that somebody's going to argue. So we're
Yes.
going to play this thing this way, and god damn it, nobody could possibly argue, right? We know
Yeah.
what percent of your effort to hit that guy came from your inborn genetic capacity versus the training, that you receive. We know exactly why you rolled that percent. There's no arguing here about what that is. Well, that's the point. Either quantitative and formalized representation or imposed and required, pump it
Yeah.
up narration, right?
Right.
Neither of those is what the rules for hitting a guy with a sword are about. Neither of those. They're both wrong turns. There are things about both of those that are not bad. There are things to like about both of those aesthetics as features,
Right.
but they're not features of what this freaking role is for.
Correct.
And that ties into what we talked about in the lab. What's the point of failing? What does failing mean fictionally? So if hitting the monster with a sword is part of ultimately leveling up, what does failing mean in the fiction? And then all of a sudden, it's kind of surprising. Then all of a sudden, the picture's complete now. It's all complete.
Right.
And then you say, okay, then how much consequence are we talking about? Now it's just a matter of scale. Can I kill him with one blow or not?
Right.
Can I, clear the room of bandits with one roll or not? Can I, how much risk do I place myself at in this effort?
Right.
Am I placing myself at massive risk for a tiny increment of success, which is exactly what it means to go up against an ogre? I can whittle him down, 10% of his hit points at a time, and he can flatten me with a blow, right? So those become relevant questions now that we know what success can do. And in this case, it's not about leveling up, it's about getting something down on the legacy. And the question now is, do you have to succeed? Like in D&D that we're talking about, you got to defeat that monster to get those experience points. Here, what are the ways that you can succeed or fail? I mean, arguably speaking, a spectacular failure can still get you sympathy. There are plenty of heroes, literary heroes, mythological heroes, for whom one of those lines is a resounding failure.
Yes, right? Correct.
So succeeding at that conflict does not strike me as criteria.
Agreed.
Right. So that becomes our interesting point. We have specific conflicts. Now, are they specific conflicts like a single exchange or roles, or is it a larger setting-based component that may take many different angles? Or is it doesn't really come down to, yes, we've run it, we've done this, we've done that, we've done this, we've done this, we've done that. But right now it is the black dog, and it is the black dog in, the revealed in the guise of the prince. Right. And it matters. Now it comes down to it. Now is the moment. Yes. Well, so you're going to have to think about it. Can you incrementally hit the conflict from many different places, and there's no one moment of truth? Or is there a moment of truth? And also, how pre-designated is this? I mean, is it like uncovering the one spot? I mean, that's one of the problems with Dogs in the Vineyard, is that the way that the setting is, the way that the scenarios are constructed can put people into the situation of, well, I'm just going to investigate the hell out of this until I finally figure out you're the problem. Now I kill you. Bang. Right.
Well, given that, I'd like to just, I don't want to divert us, but this is something that might be relevant to, or it might be something we talk about later. But the two big influences, Kurosawa's films, and then the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Those are the influences for this game. And I've been giving a lot of thought to the term, not the genre, because I don't really necessarily understand, but the idiom, the term of romance.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard people describe Lord of the Rings as Tolkien's romance. I've heard used in a lot of different contexts, and I feel like I need to understand the context of what it is, what it means, and then what it means for Empire of the Dragon Lotus. And I think understanding romance could help answer that question that you just asked, if that makes any sense.
It does, because a great deal of the romances that, now this is a personal take. One of the problems with a cool word is that everybody suddenly decides to apply it to, their favorite thing. So all of a sudden Star Wars becomes a romance. All of a sudden, this becomes a romance. That becomes a romance. Whether Kurosawa's films count as romances is actually, I think, a bit of a question. But
Yeah.
again, but on the other hand, the kind of other influences you've talked about or that we discussed earlier do qualify, I think. But again, it's up to you. It's
Yeah.
just, let's make sure that if you're going to use a term like that, it's a good idea to know what's not.
Right.
It's a really good idea to say, and not that, right?
And not that. Yes. Right.
So with that in mind, one thing that I will claim for my thinking about that term, so not to dictate this to you, is defeat. Defeat in part or in whole. I doubt anybody, I cannot think of anyone sensibly rejecting the death of King Arthur, or rather, the death of Arthur as a romance. It's got to be, right? If anything,
yes.
Right? If anything, that one counts. If that's the case, then bear in mind that the whole thing is a colossal fuck up composed of multiple sub routines of the same.
Right.
Very, very little. The whole story takes place long after. There's very little in it that is about Arthur's successes at anything.
That's true.
Yeah, or for that matter, Lancelot's successes at anything. He mostly spends his time going berserk and running off into the woods, and
right.
Or sitting down to dinner with somebody at the pavilion and ending up butchering the entire party because he's not sure why, actually.
Right.
Well, anyway, sorry, but the point
is
is
the later. Yeah, I was going to say the later holy the Grail editions. Most of them were failures.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, Percival is miraculous that he succeeds, but we also bear in mind that Percival is a goof and is clearly God's chosen in more ways than one. One of God's special creatures, and that's the guy who's going to get the Grail. The heroic seeking of the Grail, the sort of self-aware seeking of the Grail, isn't going to work. You're not going to get it, right? That's not you. It's not for you. Right. So with that in mind, not to turn the whole thing, I mean, I picked the death of Arthur because it is so gaudy in all of its defeat. I mean, so grandly, disastrous, right, for everybody. So I'm not saying, they all have to be like that, and most of them aren't.
Sure.
So, but certainly, if anything puts the Seven Samurai into that category, and I'll leave the experts to decide whether it really is in there or not, but if anything puts it into that category, it's the fact that there's more swords sticking up out of those graves than there are walking away, right? You count on your fingers, and there's more lying there in the ground than there are walking away. So
yes,
with and the young hero, may have left a child behind for the future, but he doesn't get the girl. Right. So it becomes a matter of looking at play and saying, all right, what are the specific conflicts or what are the situational prep that's involved here? And the one thing that really jumps out at me is, and this is why I'm looking at this in particular, this old thing, because in all of the rest of it, we have a very nice little section. And the part that really just jumps right out at me is the poor dude who's got no magic, who is up against, the wizard with all of the spirits of air and darkness, so to speak, swirling about him under his command. And he's facing the finger of pointing doom. And he's like, well, I guess I'm not going to come out of this looking good. I'm going to have to shoot for a success here that is going to really freaking tarnish me.
Right.
And I don't know just how meta you want to get about that. I mean, to actually threaten things that are on the character's scroll. But the idea that you would put things on the character's scroll that make him a different legacy than he would like, I mean, there it is on Lancelot's scroll, uncontrollable murderous rages.